Right, good evening, everyone. We'll begin shortly. Right, let's start. Welcome to today's session. Today we'll be looking at the US ADP jobs report. So for those of you who are new to the ADP jobs report, that is actually a precursor to the employment report in the US. So we're going to look at how that will impact gold and the US dollar index. Okay, the US dollar index again is a comparison against a basket of currency, of which euro makes up 60% of that. So we'll probably look at euro dollar as well. Right, today is the 2nd of July. My name is Sherman and I'm an FX strategist. I specialize in technical analysis. So we'll be doing quite a bit of that. So before we begin, a quick disclaimer. Trading any forms of derivatives carries significant risk. Do ensure you fully understand the risk before you make any trading decisions. Okay. Always start off with your own demo account first before moving on to your live accounts. And right now, there is still the deposit bonus. So for your first deposit up to $500 credit, you can get that 50% additional credit for you to trade. And any subsequent deposits get you that 10%. Okay, so for those of you who are looking for a calendar to track all of these events, you can go to the Vantage Market website. Under Market Analysis on the second tab, you will see the economic calendar. And in there, you will be able to track all of the events, all the major global financial events that are happening on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so what we'll be interested in is the set the filter for importance to high, and you will be able to see the first one that's coming up at roughly around 30 more minutes, the ADP employment change. And on the second column is the forecast, which is 90,000, and your previous is 37,000. Okay, so anything that is higher than the forecast of 90K will be bullish for the US dollar. And we're also looking at gold. So if we get a number higher than 90,000, then that will be a bearish signal for gold. All right. We do have additional events coming up. This Friday is a US holiday. So the major event is going to happen tomorrow, which is your non-farm payroll. So this will be usually NFPs on the first Friday of the month, but because it's a 4th of July in the US on Friday, so the non-farm payrolls will be tomorrow. Okay, so just kind of take note of that together with the ADP announcement that's coming up, and you can take a bet on where the dollar is moving towards. Okay, so as always, we're going to look at the DXY first, then we'll look at gold as well, then euro dollar at the end of this session. Okay. So the indicator that we are using the pivot points, and the pivot point is the one that we're using is called the Wayne's pivot. This set of pivot points have certain areas highlighted, so we can use that to kind of map out the plan for this month. Okay. So by default, when you're on the daily, you get if you set this Wayne's pivot to the default, okay, I'm going to open up the settings, and under the time frame, if yours is on the default, okay, you'll see that the monthly pivot is automatically shown here. I'm just going to briefly go through what the pivot points are, and then we'll see how we can actually use that for our analysis. All right, so your pivot points, you have 9 key lines that are being drawn out at the start of every period. So for this is the monthly pivot. And how we determine these lines will be based upon last month's key data points. So your pivot is the average of last month's high, low, and close. So the high of last month, the low, and the close. Okay, so pretty close together, last month's low and last month's close, last month's open and last month's high. Okay, the average of those 3 points will get you your pivot point. Let me just quickly highlight this center line. It's a bit hard to see. Okay. I'm gonna make it black. Okay. So this is your pivot point, and usually whenever you are bearish, right, price tend to fall below your pivot, and the target is the M1, S2. And if you're bullish, it tends to be above the pivot, and we're targeting M4, R2. Okay, so that's the main line. You have 8 other lines. You have 2 support lines, S1 and S2 below, and you have R1 and R2 above. Okay, R representing resistance, S representing support. Okay, so the full width of the support S2 to the pivot is equal distance to R2 to the pivot. And what we're trying to measure here is the momentum that we saw last month. So the range of last month, it's from here to the bottom. So it's 2.417. So this range, if we maintain that momentum, we can expect the range to be the same around 2.637. Okay, so it's, I think, 30th of May, 2nd of June. Okay, so this is the point. All the way down to July 27, 28, 30. Okay, so it's 2.648. That's the range. And you can see that's the same range all the way down to S2. That's the same range all the way up to R2. Okay, so if you are bearish, you want to look at this area here, the area just above the pivot, below M3. Okay, because it's the M3 pivot area, and your target would be M1, S2. Okay, this will be your target. So ideally, what you want to do is you want to have price retrace back up into this level, and then we hit down all the way to 95.17. Okay. So where are we in terms of the DXY? We're still quite a long distance from target. The target would probably be somewhere around this area, since we have been selling off from January onwards. So since the start of this year, we have been seeing the depreciation of the dollar all the way to this month. Okay. So what's the immediate resistance that we're looking for? Okay, this is kind of like the optimal entry for us, 97.88 in the middle of M3 and pivot. Okay, but as we go down to that lower time frame, when you're on the 4-hour candlestick time frame, okay, this will change to your weekly pivot. Okay, so the first thing that we see, both the weekly and the monthly pivot, we are below M2. Okay, so this will immediately become that resistance for us. Okay, so this is our DXY resistance, 97.23. And what we can expect would be a rejection of this level. And then our target would be M1, S2. Okay, I'm just going to label this as the monthly R2. This is your monthly target for sales. And then this will be the monthly target. This will be our weekly target. Okay. So this is the kind of overarching for this week. and then this month, which is slightly below it. So ideally, we would want to see, um, since the weekly target is very close to the monthly target, if we can achieve this by the end of this first week, then a retracement will be in order, and that is where we will buy it back up into the pivot. Okay, so this is the weekly target, this is the monthly target. The weekly entry will be somewhere around here. And of course, if you have taken that sell on the dollar on the first day of this week, okay, that would have been the optimal price, but we wouldn't know, right? So because of that sell-off on Monday, right, this has created the block for us to re-enter as the weekly entry for the highs of this week, which is the start of this week on the Monday. Okay, so as we go down to the 1 hour, again, multi-time frame analysis, we are looking at your daily pivot, and our daily pivot, right, the target. So the entirety of today was a buy for dollar, and we are closing into the target, and the target is roughly around 97.154. Okay, so same thing as we break above M3, okay, that will set the daily bias for us, which gives us a bullish bias for dollar for today. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to buy it back up into the highs of the Monday highs, sweep the high, and basically sell off on the dollar all the way down. So two key events that will actually enable this, two catalysts. So one would be the non-farm payrolls on Thursday, and the next one would be the holidays happening on the Friday. So there will be a lack of demand for US dollar during a US holiday because the stock market is not open. So there is usually lesser demand for the US dollar during a US holiday because there'll be less trading volume for US stocks and the need for US dollar on a US holiday. Okay, so depending on what we see for the NFP, again, forecast is 110. Previously, we are doing at 139. So if NFP falls below 110, means that there are signals that the US economy is weakening. And in that sense, that will actually give rise to a higher percentage or higher probability of the Federal Reserve reducing the federal interest rates. And when that happens, you'll see a loss in value of the dollar, and therefore dollar will continue to weaken down towards this weekly target. All right. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions as we go along. If I'm going too quickly, feel free to kind of stop me. Okay, on the flip side, we will probably not see a push to the upside for this upcoming announcement. But if we do see a better than expected NFP, then that will give us an opportunity to long up to the monthly M3 pivot, which is the best price or optimal price for us to sell. There is a gap here towards the end of last month. So breaking off that gap, we want to fill this gap up, right? And this coincides with our monthly M3 pivot. Okay, so we probably will not see the dollar retrace back down to this level. There's a reason why there was a buy up 2 hours before the start of the New York session, right? So I think this move will continue all the way up to Monday's high. And then if there is a chance, sweep that Monday's high before we move down towards the to the bottom side. Okay, so this is news induced and the selling off of the US dollar. All right. So this is kind of good because then you will give sufficient space to go up to the Monday's high. Okay, so if you were to look at the news on the second, right? So, employment change drops way below. So the change in employment, ADP employment change is negative 33,000, which means be the first few signals to signal a slowdown in the economy in the US, right? So quick sell-off of the dollar, right? But again, this is a precursor to the actual employment numbers. So we might see continued US dollar strength up all the way up to the Monday high before the actual sell-off happens. Okay, let's take a look at gold as well for the next couple of minutes before we look at euro dollar. Okay, so you want to make sure you choose the one that is under Vantage that will give you the actual data feed from Vantage if you're connecting or trading on TradingView itself. Okay. Same thing, we're going to do the high time frame analysis. Okay, it's slightly off. So sometimes you will see that the charts are slightly off. Okay, so usually what you want to do is you want to go down to that lower time frame and you want to change it in the settings, change your time frame to the monthly, and you'll be able to see that the pivot lines up correctly. Okay. So this is your start of July. So you want to make sure that the start of this box here coincides with the 1st of July. Okay, so this is your monthly pivot. Okay. Yep, something that I've forgot to mention. Well, if you want to determine the bias for using your pivots, okay, you want to look for the last period in which price broke above R2 for bullish momentum. And if there is an example where it falls below the S2, that's your bearish momentum. Okay, so for gold, it's kind of bullish for the last 2 years. So the most immediate kind of support was created in March this year, where it broke above R2, and that's kind of like your immediate support. Okay, so above this level, we are bullish. Okay, but on the lower time frame, there might be a different story. So I just want to change it back to chart because on the monthly we are bullish. We just want to look at what's the game plan for today. Okay, so a huge bearish move by the end of June, and we kind of break out from this move here, right? So you can see how it coincides nicely with this at this level on the lower time frame. Okay, so if you go back down to your daily pivots, okay, pivot M2 again is the best entry for your buys, your optimal entry. And how do we know this is the optimal entry? Okay, yesterday was bullish. We're looking for a bullish buy today. That's somewhere in your M2 pivot. Okay, so where's our target? Our target would be somewhere around here. this level at this around this level here. Okay, so we try and want to target the middle of this level, 3382. And it's going to highlight this. This will be your daily target. Okay, daily target. And of course, this number here um, was calculated based on yesterday's momentum. So you had a very strong buy-up momentum yesterday, which lasted the entire day, which started from the Asian session and all the way up to New York session before there was a retracement. Whereas for today, there was a range for 2 periods. So it's kind of a long shot for us to actually look for a continuous upward movement during the New York session. So usually after a day with a long range, prices tend to want to range within the lows of Asia and create a high from yesterday's high. Okay, so what does that look like on the daily? Okay, let me just erase all of this. There. Okay, so essentially you're looking at this on the daily, right? Downward move, breakout. You would probably want to see an equal size candle for today for the continuation of the upward movement. Otherwise, if we drop back to the daily opening, this is going to be a bearish signal on the daily time frame. Okay, so you go back to the 15 minutes with your pivots. Okay, for us to actually continue this bullish movement, our target for today is that price ends up around 3382. How do we trade that? Right, it broke out from this resistance. So we'll try and see if this move is applicable. Okay. In fact, I would say you can try and target this breakout of this candle here. And the target will be 3385. Okay. So in the event that this low is taken out, this will mean that we are bearish. Okay. Again, this is the daily open. So ending the day at the daily open would mean that it will be bearish for the rest of this week. Okay. But due to the news, ADP negative ADP growth, which is bearish for the dollar, and hence bullish for XAUSD. I'm just going to stop here and ask if you guys have any questions or any symbols that you guys want to go through. Otherwise, we'll move on to euro dollar before we end off the webinar. Where is the entry for? So this was the breakout. Okay, this was the last group of sellers that got stopped out. Okay, so this entire area here is caused by stops, right? So right now, this is probably the most probable place for us to actually look for actual buyers. Okay, so 3344, that's where we will be looking for actual buyers, because you can see that price came back down to this level and there was buying up happening. Okay, so this level is where the buyers stepped in. All of this were cascading stop losses, which was presented in one single 1 minute candle, right? In 1 minute, you have so many of these orders being filled up. And then this was where the first group of sellers were, a new group of sellers were. right? And then it shot up again. And as it comes back down, this is the fresh group of buyers that come in. Okay, so 3344, that would be where you'll be looking for an entry. Okay, and if the momentum continues, then the target would be 3383. Okay, so let's take a look at euro dollar. EUR USD. Okay. A huge buy up for the euro dollar due to the news. So we can expect, what is this level? So this was a sell, M3 sell. Let's remove this. Okay. M3 was that sell off for today. Okay, on the high time frames, we are bullish on the euro dollar. M3 sell, and the target was M1S2. Kind of missed the middle of this level. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised that the end of today we'll revisit this level before looking for a new group of buyers. Okay, so right smack at the break of this low here was where the point was rejected. Okay, so if you're looking for an entry, okay, this is your best bet for an entry. Okay, otherwise we'll be looking to retest the higher levels around this area. And if we have that chance, look for the break of structure before we hit down again. Okay, but because this is news induced and you have one session left over, this is kind of something that's going to happen over at least a day. So we can only achieve one, which is to retrace it back up to the daily open. So where is the daily open? You can use this indicator or any sessions indicator, but the daily open is right here. Okay, the daily open is right here. Okay. Which means that if you end the day at the daily open, this will be a very bullish daily candle. Okay, how it will look like on the daily would be something like this. You will have a very long bottom wick, right? And this will mean that it is actually bullish on that daily. Okay. So if this is a reversal on the daily, what we want to expect would be, even if we end the day bearish today, right? This is not bullish enough because yesterday's high is still higher than today's high, right? So ideally, what you want to do is you want to sweep out any of that last group of sellers up there before hitting down to show a true reversal. But because today's high is not as high as yesterday's high, therefore there wasn't a sweep that happened on the daily, and therefore buyers are still in control. Okay. So this might not happen. I would probably want to see, for us to be truly bearish on the euro dollar, okay, we want to see yesterday's high being taken. But if we return back to the daily open, tomorrow will be a retracement and we push up higher by Thursday New York session. Cool. So that's for euro dollar, and I think for gold, I think overall if you look at the DXY, okay, so we have broken that structure, right? So most probably that was the peak we couldn't even hit that Monday open, right? So we'll probably be looking for something like this and all the way down. 50% of it would be a good price to re-enter. So if you look at this entire level here, okay, the 50% is something that we will be looking out for. This 50% here. Right, cool. That's all I have for you guys today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And as always, you can find all of the webinars at this webpage here. And for the email, you can email me support@vantagemarkets.com, address it to Sherman, and I will answer those emails. All right. I guess that's about it for today. All the best to the upcoming trading session in about an hour's time. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow.